I didn't lose my life to anything dramatic. There was no accident, no illness that stole my years, no betrayal that tore everything apart. It was quieter than that. So quiet I didn't notice it was happening until it had already happened. I am 84 years old, and the thing that keeps me awake at night is not something I did. It's something I kept not doing. Night after night, year after year, decade after decade. I kept not doing it, and I always had a reason. The reason always felt responsible. It always felt mature. It always sounded like the right thing to say out loud. But lying here now, in the kind of silence that only finds you when everyone else has gone to sleep, I know what it really was. It was the most ordinary form of cowardice, and I wore it like common sense. When I was young, and I mean really young, the kind of young where you don't even know what young means yet, I believed something without ever being told it. I believed that life would wait for me. Not in those words. I never sat down and thought, I have all the time in the world. Nobody does that. It just lives in you like a feeling, a background hum, a quiet agreement between you and the future that says, later. You'll get to it later. I was 22 when I first felt something pulling me, a direction, not a dream exactly, not a goal. More like a version of myself that existed somewhere ahead of me, calling quietly. It wasn't loud, it wasn't urgent, it felt like it would always be there, so I didn't follow it. I did the thing that made sense, the thing people respected, the thing that paid, the thing that kept the peace. I told myself I'd get back to it when things settled down, when I had more money, more time, more freedom, when I'd earned it. I was good at waiting. I was patient. Everyone said so. You're so patient, they'd tell me. You're so practical. You're so grounded. They meant it as a compliment. I took it as one, but I think now that patience, when it's pointed at the wrong thing, isn't patience at all. It's avoidance with a better name, and I was the most patient man I knew. At 25, I thought I had decades. At 30, I thought I had time. At 40, I told myself I was halfway, and the second half would be mine. At 50, I started saying soon. At 60, I stopped saying it out loud. And by 70, I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. I had just stopped. The strange thing about time is that it doesn't feel like it's passing when it's passing. Days feel long, weeks feel manageable. Months blur a little at the edges. But years disappear like someone is pulling them out from under you while you're looking the other way. I remember being 36 and thinking I was still figuring things out. That was normal. Everyone around me was still figuring things out. We were all busy. We were all building something. We were all just getting started, even though we'd already been going for over a decade. Then one morning I woke up and I was 43. Not slowly, not gradually, I just was. The alarm went off and I was 43, and I could not explain where the time had gone. I could explain what I'd done, the work, the responsibilities, the daily grind, but I could not explain where the years went, because the years and the days didn't feel like the same thing. The days were full, the years were empty. I remember sitting at my desk at 47 doing something I had done 1,000 times before, a task that meant nothing to me and would mean nothing to anyone after it was done. And for the first time, I had a thought that frightened me. I thought, I have been here before. Not this desk, not this office. I mean this exact moment, this feeling, this weight of a day that doesn't belong to me. I had been here 1,000 times, and I would be here 1,000 more if I didn't change something. But I didn't change anything, because the next day came, and it needed things, and I gave them. And the day after that came, and I gave again. And that's how it works. Time doesn't ask permission. It just takes. And if you're not paying attention, you won't even feel it leave. You'll just wake up one day and realize you've been paying rent on a life you never moved into. There's a cost to living this way that nobody talks about. Not because it's hidden, but because it doesn't look like a cost. It looks like a normal life. From the outside, I had everything right. A career, a home, a family, a routine. People would have looked at me and said, he's doing fine. And I was. I was doing fine. But fine is not the same as alive. Fine is the sound a person makes when they've stopped asking for more, when they've made peace with less, not less money, not less comfort, less of themselves. I gave people a version of me that was responsible and stable and dependable, but there was another version, one that had ideas, had hunger, had a restless need to create something that didn't exist yet, And I kept that version locked away because I thought he was irresponsible, reckless, selfish. So I buried him slowly, politely, the way you bury something you don't want to look at but can't quite throw away. And the people closest to me never knew: my wife, my children, my friends. They knew the man who showed up. They didn't know the man who stayed behind. That's the invisible cost. It's not what you lose, it's who you never become. And the people who love you, they never know what they missed. They never know there was a fuller version of you that almost existed. They love the version they got, and that's beautiful. But it's also the saddest part, because they deserved the version that was whole, and so did I. My daughter told me once, she must have been about 14, she said, "Dad, what did you want to be when you were my age?" And I opened my mouth to answer, and nothing came out. Not because I didn't remember, because I remembered too well. And I didn't know how to say it out loud without my voice breaking. I told her I wanted to be exactly what I was: a good father, a good provider. She smiled. And I carried that lie into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water and stood there alone for a very long time. There were moments, small ones, when the truth almost reached me. Once, when I was 51, I drove past a building where a man was painting a sign by hand. He was standing on a short ladder, leaning close to the glass, tracing letters with slow precision. His face was calm, focused. He was completely inside what he was doing, and I pulled over without knowing why. I sat in the car and watched him for almost 10 minutes. I didn't know him. I didn't care about the sign. But something about the way he moved, the slowness, the attention, the way his hand didn't hesitate, made my chest tight. He wasn't performing. He wasn't proving anything. He was just doing the thing he knew how to do, and he was present inside of it. And I realized, sitting there, that I couldn't remember the last time I felt present in anything. I drove away. I didn't think about it again for weeks, but it stayed in my body. That tightness, that ache that sits just below the throat, the one that doesn't have a name but shows up when you see someone living the way you were supposed to. Another time, years later, I found an old notebook in a box in the attic. It was mine, from my 20s. I opened it, and the handwriting hit me before the words did. The letters were fast, eager, leaning forward like they were in a hurry to exist. The pages were filled with ideas, plans, rough sketches of things I wanted to build, sentences half finished because the next thought came too fast. There was an energy in that notebook that I didn't recognize as mine anymore. I sat on the attic floor and read every page, and when I was done, I closed it and put it back in the box. I don't know why I didn't keep it with me. Maybe because it hurt too much. Maybe because holding it felt like holding a letter from someone who had died, someone I had let die. Those were the moments, not grand realizations, not life-changing events, just cracks, small cracks in the surface I'd built over myself. And each time I patched them. I went back to routine. I went back to safe. I went back to fine. Because the truth, when it shows itself in small doses, is easy to ignore. It's only when it shows up all at once, years too late, that you can't look away anymore. There is a lie that most people believe, and I know this because I believed it for over 60 years. The lie is that one day things will open up. One day the noise will quiet down. The obligations will lighten. The timing will feel right. The fear will leave. And you will finally step into the thing you've been carrying inside you since you were young enough to still believe in it. That day doesn't come. It doesn't come because it was never a day. It was a decision, and the decision doesn't arrive. You make it or you don't, and every day you don't make it, the decision gets heavier. Not because it becomes harder, because you become more tired. And tired people don't choose new roads. They stay on the one they're already on, because it's paved, because they know the way, because turning around feels like admitting something they're not ready to admit. I told myself for decades that I was being realistic, that life has demands, that some people get to follow their instincts, and some people have to be steady, and that being steady was noble, that it meant something, and it does mean something. I'm not saying it doesn't. But so does being honest with yourself. And I wasn't. I was honest with my boss, honest with my taxes, honest with my neighbors, but I lied to myself every single day. I told myself I was content. I told myself the ache in my chest was just stress. I told myself the restlessness at 3 in the morning was just insomnia. It wasn't insomnia. It was the truth tapping on the window, and I kept the curtains closed. The lie isn't dramatic. That's why it works. It doesn't sound like a lie. It sounds like maturity, like sacrifice, like responsibility, and the world rewards it. The world smiles at you when you choose safety. It nods. It approves. It says, smart man, and you believe it. Because it's easier to believe the world than to believe yourself until you're 84, and the world is asleep and you're not, and the only voice left is your own, and it's saying the same thing it said when you were 22. There was no epiphany, no lightning bolt, no hospital bed revelation where everything suddenly made sense. It was a Tuesday. I was 78. I had just finished breakfast. My wife was in the garden. The house was quiet, and I sat down in a chair by the window and looked outside at nothing in particular. And for the first time in my life, I had no next thing, no errand, no task, no obligation pulling me forward. The calendar was empty. The phone was silent. And in that silence, the thing I had been avoiding for 60 years walked into the room and sat down across from me, not like a thought, like a presence, the weight of every day I had traded away. Every morning I had handed over to something that didn't matter. Every evening I had spent recovering from a day that wasn't mine. It was all there, not as memory, as mass, as a heaviness in my body that I had been carrying so long I thought it was just what aging felt like. But it wasn't aging. It was grief. Grief for the life I had inside me that I never let out. Grief for the person I could hear but never obeyed. Grief for the years, not the years behind me, but the years I spent being someone I didn't need to be. I wasn't grieving because I was old. I was grieving because I finally had nothing left to distract me from the truth. And the truth is this: I had enough time. I always had enough time. What I didn't have was the courage to spend it on what mattered. I spent it on what was expected. I spent it on what was easy to explain. I spent it on a life that looked right from the outside and felt hollow from the inside. And now the time is almost gone. Not almost, mostly. The candle doesn't have much wick left, and I can't relight the part that already burned. What became clear is not some lesson. It's not something I can hand to you wrapped in wisdom. It's simpler and more terrible than that. I had one life, and I lived it carefully, and carefully is not the same as fully. And the difference between those two things is everything. I don't know how old you are. I don't know what your life looks like right now, whether you're in a room alone or surrounded by people, whether the day ahead of you feels heavy or light, whether you're listening to this in the morning or late at night when the world is quiet and your thoughts are loud. But I know something about you. I know it because I know something about myself. There is something you've been putting off. Not a task, not an errand. Something deeper, something that sits in the back of your chest, behind the ribs, where you store the things you don't say out loud. Something that doesn't have a deadline because it's not work. It's not a project. It's a way of being, a direction, a version of your life that you can almost see but haven't stepped into yet. And you have a reason for not stepping into it, a good reason, a rational reason, a reason that makes perfect sense when you say it out loud. I'm not going to tell you that your reason is wrong. I'm going to tell you that mine was right. My reason was perfectly right. It was logical. It was responsible. It protected the people I loved. It kept the roof over our heads. It kept the peace. It made sense for 40 years, and it cost me my life. Not my heartbeat, not my breath, not the years on the calendar. It cost me my life, the one that was mine, the one that had my name on it, the one I was supposed to live, not watch from a distance while I lived someone else's idea of what a man should be. You think you have time. I know you do, because I thought so too. And the thing about thinking you have time is that you're right until you're not. And when you're not, there's no warning. There's no alarm that goes off. There's no moment where the universe taps you on the shoulder and says, this is it. This is your last chance. It just becomes the past, quietly, without ceremony. The moment you were going to start becomes the moment you didn't. And then it joins all the other moments you didn't. And they pile up. and they become a life, a finished, completed, ordinary life. And you will lie where I am lying now, in a room that is too quiet, with a body that is too tired, and a mind that remembers everything you postponed. I am not telling you to be brave. I'm not telling you to take risks. I'm not telling you to abandon what you've built. I am telling you that the thing in your chest, the one you keep pushing down, it doesn't go away. It never goes away. It just gets quieter. And one day you realize it stopped knocking. Not because it gave up, because you did. Don't let that be your story. Not because I said so, because you already know.